Tonight, let your mind slow as ancient American waterways begin to flow again in quiet memory. If this story helps you drift into fast, deep sleep, consider subscribing and leaving a calm comment about where you're listening from. Now, get comfortable, breathe gently, and allow the water's rhythm to carry you into rest. As night settles in and the world begins to quiet, imagine a time long before pipes ran beneath streets or pumps hummed behind walls. In those earlier days, water did not arrive at the turn of a handle. It followed the land itself, moving patiently, guided by gravity, shaped by hills, valleys, and careful human understanding. Long ago, across what is now the United States, people learned to live in close partnership with water. Rivers, springs, and seasonal streams were not obstacles to overcome, but companions to observe. Water was watched carefully, listened to quietly, and respected deeply. Its movement set the rhythm of daily life. In those times, the land itself acted as a map. Gentle slopes showed where water preferred to travel. Natural depressions collected rain. Springs revealed themselves slowly, sometimes only after long observation. People learned that forcing water was unnecessary. If given space, it would find its own way. As you breathe slowly now, imagine standing in a wide, open landscape at dusk. The air is calm. The ground beneath your feet is firm and cool. Somewhere nearby, water moves quietly, not rushing, not demanding attention, simply flowing where the land allows it to go. Early water channels were shaped with patience. Shallow trenches followed the natural contours of the earth, allowing water to travel smoothly without interruption. Stones were placed carefully, not to block the flow, but to guide it gently. Earth was moved only where necessary, preserving balance rather than disrupting it. There was no rush to complete these channels. They were built over time, sometimes across generations. Each adjustment was small, thoughtful, and deliberate. If water pooled unexpectedly, the land was studied again. If a channel overflowed, it was widened gently. Every response was calm and measured. Water followed gravity, and people followed water. This simple relationship created systems that were reliable without being rigid. There were no sharp angles or sudden drops. Everything moved gradually, predictably, and quietly. Imagine the sound of water moving through such a channel at night. It is soft and steady, like a distant whisper. This sound was familiar and comforting, signaling that life was supported and the land was working as it should. Communities settled where water flowed naturally. Villages formed near streams that never fully dried. Fields were planted where channels could carry moisture slowly and evenly. Water shaped not just the land, but the patterns of living upon it. As your breathing deepens, imagine how calming it must have been to trust this system. There were no machines to monitor, no switches to check. Once water was guided properly, it simply continued, day and night, without effort. People learned to read subtle signs. The color of soil revealed moisture levels. Certain plants indicated nearby springs. The sound of moving water changed slightly with the seasons, offering quiet information to those who listened closely. This knowledge was passed down gently through observation rather than instruction. Children learned by walking alongside elders, noticing where water curved and where it slowed. Understanding grew naturally, just like the channels themselves. Water followed the land because the land was allowed to lead. There was wisdom in this restraint. By working with natural slopes and materials, early aqueduct-like systems remained flexible. They could adjust to heavy rains or dry periods without breaking. As night deepens, imagine lying near one of these ancient channels. The earth beneath you is cool. The air carries a faint sense of moisture. Somewhere nearby, water continues its steady journey, unaffected by time or darkness. There was no fear in this movement. Water was not something to control aggressively. It was something to guide with care. This approach created trust in the land, in the flow, and in the quiet systems that sustained life. Over time, these channels became part of the landscape itself. Grass grew along their edges, stones smoothed under constant flow. From a distance, they were barely noticeable, blending seamlessly into the earth. This invisibility was intentional. The goal was not to build monuments, but to support life quietly. Water infrastructure did not demand attention. It did its work silently. As your thoughts slow, consider how different this feels from modern systems. There were no alarms, no pressure, no urgency. Maintenance happened slowly, when needed, guided by observation rather than schedules. At night, water continued to move, unseen but reliable. This consistency allowed people to sleep deeply, knowing the flow would not suddenly stop. The land and water had reached an understanding. Imagine the moon rising over this landscape. Its light reflects faintly off the water's surface, tracing the path of the channel as it curves gently through the earth. Everything feels balanced, complete, and calm. Before pipes and pumps, water followed the land, and in doing so, it taught patience. It showed that strength could be quiet, that systems could endure without force. As you rest now, allow your own thoughts to follow this same pattern. There is no need to rush them or control them. Let them move naturally, guided by the shape of calm. Just as water once flowed gently through earth-shaped channels, sleep can flow gently through you, unforced, steady, and deep. The land knew where water needed to go, and tonight your body knows how to rest. Breathe slowly, let go softly, and allow yourself to drift into sleep, carried by the same quiet wisdom that once guided water across the land, peacefully, naturally, and without effort. As the night deepens and your breathing settles into a slow, gentle rhythm, imagine a time when water was understood not through instruments or measurements, but through quiet attention. Long before charts, maps, or modern tools, early Americans learned to read rivers and springs by listening, not just with ears, but with patience, presence, and respect. Water was never silent, even when it moved slowly. It spoke in subtle ways, through shifts in sound, changes in clarity, and the steady language of movement. Those who depended on it learned to notice these details, understanding that water always shared what it needed if one was willing to listen. Imagine standing beside a river at dusk. The surface reflects fading light, and the sound of moving water feels steady and calm. To an untrained observer, it may seem unchanged, but to those who lived alongside it, the river was always communicating. The pace of the flow revealed much. A slower current suggested depth and stability. A faster one hinted at shallow ground or recent rain. The way water curved around stones showed where erosion was happening and where the river might shift over time. These observations were not hurried. They unfolded gradually, like learning the rhythm of a familiar song. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how springs were discovered. Often they were not found suddenly, but noticed over time. Slightly greener plants, cooler air near the ground, soil that stayed damp even in dry seasons. These were quiet clues gathered patiently. Springs were respected deeply. They represented reliability, water emerging steadily from the earth, unaffected by surface conditions. Early Americans learned to protect these sources naturally, keeping them clear without enclosing them completely. The goal was not ownership, but continuity. Rivers were read season by season. During spring, rising water spoke of melting snow and rain upstream. In summer, lower levels revealed patterns in the riverbed, where water preferred to linger and where it passed quickly. Autumn brought calmer flows, while winter revealed which parts of a river would continue moving beneath cold air. Listening meant returning often. It meant standing quietly and allowing patterns to reveal themselves. Over time, familiarity replaced uncertainty. Rivers became predictable without becoming controlled. Imagine walking along a riverbank in the evening. The ground beneath your feet feels firm but yielding. The sound of water changes subtly as you move, softer near bends, clearer where stones line the bed. These changes were meaningful, offering guidance without instruction. Early Americans also listened to how animals responded to water. Birds gathered near dependable streams. Tracks along the bank revealed where animals drank regularly. These signs added layers of understanding, reinforcing what the water itself was already saying. This shared awareness created harmony. Water was not interrupted unnecessarily. Channels were placed only where water already wanted to go. Springs were guided gently outward, never forced beyond their natural capacity. As your breathing deepens, imagine how calming this relationship must have felt. There was no anxiety about supply when attention was consistent. Water provided when respected. Trust grew naturally. At night, rivers continued speaking softly. Their steady sound carried through the darkness, reassuring those nearby. Even when unseen, the flow could be heard, offering comfort and continuity. Imagine lying near such a river now. The sound blends with the night, not sharp or distracting, but rhythmic and soothing. Your thoughts begin to align with this movement, rising gently, then settling. Early Americans understood that water did not need constant interference. Once its patterns were known, it could be relied upon. This understanding reduced effort and increased peace. Springs, in particular, were approached with quiet gratitude. Their steady presence meant life could continue even in dry times. People learned where to walk gently, where to avoid disturbing the ground, and how to keep these sources clean without enclosing them completely. This care was not driven by fear of loss, but by appreciation. Water was a partner, not a resource to dominate. As night deepens further, imagine the moon reflecting faintly on a river's surface. The flow appears unchanged, just as it has for countless nights before. Time stretches, urgency fades. Listening to water required stillness, and in stillness the mind learned to rest. Early Americans passed this knowledge quietly through shared experience rather than instruction. Understanding was absorbed naturally, just like the sound of flowing water becoming familiar over time. As your thoughts slow, consider how little effort is required now. You do not need to analyze or decide. Like the river, you can simply continue. The flow does not hurry, neither do you. Water continues its journey, guided by land and gravity, and sleep can continue its journey too, guided by calm and release. Breathe gently. Let your thoughts move like water, softly, steadily, without resistance. And as you drift deeper into rest, imagine the rivers and springs still flowing quietly through the land, listened to and trusted, just as your body is trusted now to carry you into peaceful, natural sleep. As night settles more deeply and your breathing becomes slow and unforced, imagine a time when building materials were chosen not for speed or efficiency, but for harmony. Long before concrete and steel, early Americans shaped water systems using what the land offered freely: stone, clay, and earth, materials that understood water because they had always lived alongside it. These materials were not selected randomly. Each one had a quiet relationship with water, learned through long observation. Stone offered stability. Clay held moisture gently. Earth absorbed and released water at a steady pace. Together, they formed channels that guided water without rushing it, controlling it, or asking it to behave unnaturally. Imagine standing beside a shallow water channel at dusk. The edges are lined with smooth stones gathered nearby, each one placed carefully by hand. The stones are not uniform, yet they fit together naturally, creating a path that feels calm and intentional. Water moves across them softly, never splashing or resisting. Stone was trusted for its patience. It did not erode quickly. It held its shape through changing seasons. When placed correctly, stone created channels that could last for generations. Early builders learned which stones worked best, those that felt solid but not brittle, heavy enough to stay in place, yet shaped by time and weather. Clay was used where flexibility mattered. Pressed into the ground, it formed a natural seal, slowing water just enough to prevent loss without stopping the flow. Clay expanded gently when wet and contracted when dry, adjusting naturally with the seasons. This responsiveness made it ideal for guiding water over long distances. As you breathe slowly now, imagine the sensation of cool clay beneath your hands. It feels smooth, grounded, alive with quiet potential. Clay was shaped slowly, never forced. Builders worked with its natural texture, allowing it to settle and strengthen over time. Earth itself played the most important role. Channels were carved into gentle slopes following the land's natural contours. Soil was moved minimally, only where necessary. This preserved the land's balance and reduced strain on the system. When rain came, the earth absorbed excess water calmly, preventing sudden surges. These materials worked together quietly. Stone guided, clay sealed, earth supported. No single element dominated. Each contributed according to its nature. Imagine water entering such a channel at night. It moves smoothly, guided by gravity and softened by earth. There is no sound of pressure or force, only a steady, reassuring flow. This consistency created trust. People knew water would arrive where it was needed without constant adjustment. Maintenance was gentle and infrequent. When stones shifted slightly, they were reset by hand. When clay thinned, it was reinforced carefully. There was no urgency. These systems were designed to be forgiving, allowing small changes without failure. As your thoughts slow, consider how different this approach feels. Strength came not from resisting water, but from accommodating it. Materials were chosen because they understood water's behavior, not because they could overpower it. Early Americans observed how water interacted with these materials naturally. Streams that flowed over stone beds remained clear. Water that passed through clay-rich soil stayed cool. Earth filtered impurities quietly, improving quality without intervention. This knowledge grew over time, passed through experience rather than instruction. Children learned by watching water move through channels, noticing how materials affected speed and clarity. Understanding developed slowly, just like the systems themselves. At night, these channels continued working silently. There were no valves to close, no switches to monitor. Water flowed steadily, guided by materials that required nothing in return. Imagine lying near one of these channels now. The earth beneath you feels solid, the air is calm. Somewhere nearby, water continues its quiet journey, shaped by stone, clay, and soil working together. These materials aged gracefully. Stones smoothed further, clay settled deeper. Earth grew grasses along channel edges, reinforcing structure naturally. Over time, the channels blended into the landscape, becoming nearly invisible. This invisibility was intentional. The goal was never to impress, but to sustain. Water infrastructure was meant to serve quietly, allowing daily life to unfold without interruption. As night deepens, imagine the moonlight tracing the path of water across stone and earth. Everything feels balanced. Nothing strains, nothing rushes. These systems taught an important lesson, that durability does not require hardness, flexibility does not require weakness, and guidance does not require force. Stone, clay, and earth did not fight water, they listened to it. As you rest now, allow your body to follow the same principle. There is no need to hold tension, no need to resist the pull of sleep. You can allow rest to move through you gently, supported by what is already there. Just as water once flowed calmly through earth-shaped channels, sleep can flow calmly through you, guided, steady, and natural. Breathe slowly, let go softly, and as you drift deeper into rest, imagine the quiet strength of stone, the gentle adaptability of clay, and the steady support of earth, all working together, guiding you peacefully into deep, unbroken sleep. As the night grows quieter and your breathing settles into a slow, even rhythm, imagine a time when progress was measured not by how quickly something was finished, but by how well it endured. Long before modern construction schedules and deadlines, ancient aqueducts across what is now the United States were built with patience, steady, thoughtful, and unhurried. These early water channels were never rushed. Their builders understood that water itself moved slowly and consistently, and that any structure meant to guide it must reflect the same pace. Speed was unnecessary. Endurance mattered far more. Imagine standing at the edge of a gently sloping hillside at dawn. The air is cool, the land is quiet. A small group of builders works nearby, but there is no sense of urgency. Each movement is deliberate. Stones are lifted carefully, set down slowly, adjusted by hand until they rest naturally in place. No one is watching a clock. The day unfolds as it will. Aqueducts were often built in stages, sometimes over many seasons. Builders would complete a short section, then pause to observe how water moved through it. They watched during rain. They watched during dry spells. Only after understanding the behavior of the flow would they continue. This approach required patience and trust. If water pooled unexpectedly, the land was studied again. If the flow slowed, the channel was adjusted slightly. Nothing was forced. Every correction was small and thoughtful. As you breathe slowly now, imagine the calm that came from working this way. There was no pressure to finish quickly. The builders knew the aqueduct would serve generations. Taking extra time now meant fewer problems later. Stone by stone, Earth by earth, these channels grew gradually. Some days, little visible progress was made. Other days, a single well-placed stone made all the difference. Both were valued equally. Aqueducts followed the natural slope of the land, sometimes winding gently rather than cutting straight lines. This was not inefficiency, it was wisdom. Straight paths often required force. Curved paths worked with gravity and terrain, reducing strain on both structure and water. Imagine the sound of tools striking stone, soft, controlled, never harsh. The work was quiet, almost meditative. Builders paused often, stepping back to observe, allowing the land to guide the next decision. This slow pace created resilience. When heavy rains came, aqueducts adapted. When dry seasons arrived, they continued functioning. Their flexibility came from patience built into every layer. As night deepens, imagine water moving through one of these completed aqueducts. It flows steadily, uninterrupted, guided gently along its path. There is no vibration, no pressure, just a calm, continuous movement. This consistency allowed communities to relax. Water arrived reliably, fields were nourished evenly. Daily routines unfolded without anxiety. Trust replaced worry. Maintenance followed the same patient rhythm. Aqueducts were checked regularly, but never obsessively. Small repairs were made when needed, using the same materials and methods as the original construction. Nothing was overcorrected, nothing was ignored. Children grew up watching this process. They learned that good work took time, that rushing often created problems, that patience was not delay, it was preparation. As your thoughts slow, consider how rare this mindset feels today. Yet in these ancient systems, patience was the foundation of strength. Aqueducts built slowly blended seamlessly into the landscape. Grass grew along their edges, stones weathered gently. Over time, they appeared less like structures and more like features of the land itself. This blending was intentional. Builders did not seek recognition. Their success was measured by invisibility, by how quietly water moved, how rarely attention was needed. At night, aqueducts continued working unseen. Water flowed in darkness just as it did in daylight. There were no lights, no signals, only trust in what had been built carefully. Imagine lying near one of these channels now. The ground beneath you is cool, the air is still. Somewhere nearby, water moves steadily, unaffected by time or urgency. There is comfort in knowing that nothing is being rushed, that systems can function beautifully without constant intervention, that patience creates reliability. Aqueducts built with patience did not fail suddenly. They aged slowly, giving signs when adjustments were needed. This allowed people to respond calmly, without crisis. As night settles fully, imagine the builders resting after a long day. They do not worry about what remains unfinished. They trust that tomorrow will offer clarity, just as today did. This trust allowed rest to come easily. Muscles relaxed, thoughts quieted, sleep arrived naturally. You can allow yourself the same ease now. There is nothing you need to complete tonight, nothing you need to fix. Like those ancient aqueducts, your body knows how to function when given time and calm. Let your breathing follow the same gentle pace. Inhale slowly, exhale completely. Patience does not slow progress, it deepens it. And as you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself carried by the quiet strength of systems built slowly and wisely, where nothing is forced, Nothing is rushed, and everything flows exactly as it should, into deep, peaceful rest. As night deepens and your breathing becomes slow and steady, imagine a force so constant that it needs no introduction. Long before engines, motors, or machines, ancient Americans worked alongside gravity, quietly, patiently, and with great understanding. It was not something they tried to overcome, it was something they trusted. Gravity was the silent partner in early water engineering. It did not require fuel or maintenance. It worked day and night without pause. Builders learned to respect its presence, shaping aqueducts and channels that allowed water to move naturally, guided by gentle slopes rather than force. Imagine standing on a hillside at dusk, looking out over a broad landscape. The ground slopes almost imperceptibly downward. To the eye, it may seem flat, but to water and to those who listened closely, that slight incline meant movement. Early engineers studied these subtle changes carefully. They walked the land repeatedly, feeling the incline beneath their feet. They noticed where water lingered after rain and where it moved away quietly. These observations shaped every decision. As you breathe slowly now, imagine water entering an ancient channel. It does not rush forward, it begins to move gently, encouraged by gravity's steady pull. There is no pressure, no strain, just a smooth, predictable flow. This partnership required precision, but not haste. Slopes were calculated by observation rather than measurement tools. A channel that dropped too quickly could erode. One that dropped too little could stagnate. Finding the balance was an art, learned through experience and patience. Builders adjusted slopes gradually, sometimes by no more than a finger's width. Small changes made large differences over long distances. This sensitivity to gravity's influence allowed aqueducts to carry water for miles without interruption. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of seeing water move exactly as intended, not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily, day after day. This reliability brought peace. Gravity did the work, and people allowed it to. As night settles deeper, imagine lying near one of these channels. The water moves nearby, unseen but audible in its gentle sound. You know it will continue flowing whether you watch it or not. This trust freed the mind. There was no need to monitor constantly, no switches to check. Gravity did not fail suddenly, it simply continued. Early Americans understood that gravity could not be commanded, it could only be respected. Structures that ignored it did not last. Those that worked with it endured. Channels were often built slightly wider than necessary. This allowed water to move comfortably, reducing friction and wear. Gravity encouraged movement, but space allowed calm. At night, gravity continued its quiet work. Water flowed through channels even in complete darkness. This continuity allowed people to sleep deeply, confident in what had been built. As your breathing deepens, imagine how little effort is required now. Like water, you are supported by forces you do not need to manage consciously. Your body knows how to rest. Gravity also influenced where communities formed. Settlements were placed where water could arrive naturally, without lifting or pumping. Fields were arranged to benefit from gravity-fed irrigation, ensuring even distribution. This reduced labor and increased harmony. Energy was conserved. Life moved at a sustainable pace. Imagine the builders resting at night, knowing gravity would continue its work while they slept. There was comfort in this certainty. Gravity asked for nothing. It required no maintenance. It simply existed, reliable and constant. This partnership taught humility. Humans did not control the system, they participated in it. Success came from alignment, not dominance. As thoughts slow, consider how comforting this idea can be. You do not need to control everything. Some things work best when allowed to happen naturally. Gravity continues to support you now. Your body rests against the earth, held securely without effort. Water continues to flow through ancient channels in memory, guided by the same force that holds you steady. Inhale gently. Exhale slowly. Let gravity carry not just water, but your thoughts, downward, away from tension, into rest. And as sleep arrives, it does so quietly, steadily, and without resistance, guided by the same silent partner that once moved water across the land and now supports you completely into deep, peaceful sleep. As the night settles more fully and your breathing becomes slow and even, imagine a landscape where water moved quietly through carefully shaped channels, bringing life without interruption. Long ago, across what is now the United States, these channels were not distant infrastructure. They were woven into everyday life, feeding villages, fields, and the gentle rhythms of daily living. Water arrived without announcement. It did not rush or demand attention. It flowed steadily along paths shaped by land and guided by human care. This quiet reliability allowed communities to grow calmly without fear of sudden loss or constant adjustment. Imagine waking in such a village at dawn. The air is cool, the ground holds the night's calm. Nearby, a channel carries water past homes and gardens, its sound soft and familiar. It is not loud enough to distract, yet present enough to reassure. These channels served many purposes. They provided water for drinking, cooking, and washing. They nourished fields planted nearby. They supported animals, plants, and people alike. Yet they never dominated the space. Their presence felt natural, almost invisible. As you breathe slowly now, imagine walking along one of these channels during the day. The ground beside it is firm and smooth from frequent use. Children step carefully along its edge. Adults pause briefly, using the water without hurry. The channels were designed to deliver water evenly. Fields received moisture gradually, preventing flooding or dryness. This balance allowed crops to grow steadily, reducing stress on both land and people. Early farmers understood that consistency mattered more than volume. Water that arrived slowly and regularly supported healthy growth. Sudden surges caused damage. The channels were shaped to avoid extremes, offering moderation and reliability. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of watching fields flourish under this system. Crops grow evenly, soil remains stable, the land responds calmly to the water it receives. Villages were arranged around these channels thoughtfully. Homes were placed close enough for access, but far enough to avoid disturbance. Paths crossed water gently, allowing movement without interruption. At night, the channels continued their work. Water flowed in darkness just as it did in daylight. This continuity allowed life to slow without concern. As your breathing deepens, imagine sitting near a channel in the evening. The sound of water blends with the quiet of the night. Fires glow softly nearby. Voices lower naturally. The day begins to release its hold. These channels supported quiet routines, washing hands at the end of the day, watering small gardens, filling vessels slowly. Nothing was rushed. Each action followed the rhythm of the flow. Maintenance was simple and shared. When debris collected, it was removed gently. When edges eroded slightly, they were reinforced by hand. Care was part of daily life, not a separate task. This shared responsibility strengthened community bonds. Everyone understood the value of the channels. Everyone participated in their upkeep. As night deepens further, imagine lying down within the village. The channels are still moving nearby. Their sound is steady and reassuring. You know water will be there in the morning, just as it is now. Fields rest at night, absorbing moisture slowly. Soil settles. Plants hold water quietly, preparing for the next day. The land feels supported rather than strained. These channels did not demand attention. They allowed people to focus on living rather than worrying. This reduced stress, allowing calm to spread naturally. Imagine how peaceful it must have been to trust such systems fully, to know that water arrived gently, without noise or disruption, to feel supported by something steady and reliable. As your thoughts slow, consider how this same calm can exist now. You do not need to manage everything. Some systems work best when allowed to continue quietly. The channels were not monuments. They were not decorated or celebrated. Their success was measured by how easily they blended into daily life. Over time, they became part of memory. Even when no longer in use, their paths remained visible in the land, quietly marking where life once flowed. As sleep approaches, imagine yourself drifting into rest within such a village. The night is calm, the channels continue their gentle work, everything feels balanced. Your breathing aligns with this rhythm. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. Just as water once fed villages and fields without disturbance, rest can feed you now, quietly, steadily, and completely. Allow sleep to arrive naturally, guided by the same calm flow that once shaped daily life across the land, and carry you peacefully into the night. As the night deepens and your breathing settles into a slow, natural rhythm, imagine water continuing its journey without pause. Long before clocks divided time into hours and minutes, water marked time in a different way, by movement, by sound, and by consistency. Across ancient American landscapes, water flowed day and night, creating a rhythm that shaped life gently and reliably. Water did not recognize morning or evening as boundaries. It did not hurry at sunrise or slow at dusk. It moved according to gravity and land, steady and patient. This constancy became a quiet foundation for daily life. Imagine standing beside an ancient channel just before dawn. The sky is pale, the air cool. Water glides past silently, unchanged by the coming day. As light slowly grows, the flow remains the same. There is comfort in this reliability. During the day, water reflected sunlight, casting soft patterns along stone and earth. It carried warmth slowly, absorbing heat without rushing. People moved alongside it, drawing water, tending fields, washing hands, each action timed naturally to the flow rather than imposed schedules. As you breathe slowly now, imagine the sound of water during daylight. It is present but not intrusive, blending with footsteps, voices, and wind. It supports activity without competing for attention. At midday, when the sun stood high, water continued calmly. It cooled the air near channels and nourished soil steadily. Plants responded quietly, drawing what they needed without excess. Water was never rushed to meet demand. Instead, life adapted to its pace. This reduced strain and created balance. Fields were watered gradually, villages stayed cool, the land remained stable. As afternoon softened into evening, the quality of water's sound changed subtly. Shadows lengthened, light dimmed. The flow remained steady, but the world around it slowed. This contrast signaled the approach of rest. Imagine the quiet of early evening now. Fires are lit gently, conversations lower. Water continues moving, unaltered by the shift. Its presence reassures, reminding everyone that the system remains intact. As night arrives fully, water becomes more noticeable, not louder, but clearer. Without daytime noise, its rhythm stands out. It flows through channels, over stones, along earth-shaped paths, offering a steady sound that calms the mind. As your breathing deepens, imagine lying near one of these channels at night. The sound of water feels like a gentle pulse, repeating without variation. It is neither exciting nor dull, it simply is. This nighttime flow supported deep rest. People slept knowing water would not stop. There were no valves to close, no switches to fail. The rhythm continued without effort. Water moving at night also regulated temperature. It released warmth slowly, preventing sudden cold. This created comfort, especially in open spaces where walls and roofs were simple. The rhythm of water taught patience. There was no advantage in rushing to use it. It would still be there. This understanding allowed minds to relax, releasing urgency. Early Americans recognized that the best systems worked continuously without supervision. Water was trusted to do what it had always done, move steadily, reliably, quietly. As thoughts slow, imagine the rhythm of water aligning with your breath. Inhale gently, exhale fully. The flow remains constant, just as your breath does when you stop trying to control it. During storms, water responded naturally. Channels filled gradually, excess overflowed gently into surrounding earth. There was no sudden force. The rhythm adjusted without breaking. During dry periods, water levels lowered slowly, offering time to adapt. Nothing failed abruptly. This gradual change reduced fear and allowed calm responses. As night deepens further, imagine generations sleeping beside this same rhythm, children falling asleep to the sound, elders resting with confidence. The water never hurried, neither did sleep. The rhythm of water moving day and night created trust, not just in infrastructure, but in life itself. When basic needs were met quietly, energy could be directed toward living rather than worrying. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine the flow continuing beyond sight. It does not depend on awareness. It does not change when unseen. This understanding is comforting. You do not need to watch your breath for it to continue. You do not need to manage sleep for it to arrive. Just as water flows, whether observed or not, rest arrives when allowed. The night grows quieter. The water continues its steady movement. The land holds everything gently. Your breathing slows further. Thoughts become fewer. The rhythm remains. And as you drift into sleep, you are carried by the same calm continuity that once guided water through ancient channels, moving steadily, quietly and without effort, through the night and into deep, peaceful rest. As night settles gently and your breathing becomes slow and steady, imagine a time when caring for something was not a task to complete quickly, but a practice to return to often. Long ago, across ancient American landscapes, the maintenance of water channels was not viewed as labor alone. It was a quiet ritual, repeated patiently, passed down through generations, and approached with calm attention. These channels were not built and forgotten, they were lived with. They became part of daily awareness, like the changing sky or the steady movement of water itself. Caring for them did not interrupt life, it supported it. Imagine an early morning beside one of these channels. The light is soft, the air is cool. Someone walks slowly along the water's edge, not searching for problems, but simply observing. This gentle attention was the foundation of maintenance. Small adjustments were made when needed. A stone shifted slightly by winter rain was returned to place. A bit of sediment was lifted carefully by hand. Grass growing too close was trimmed gently, not removed aggressively. Every action was measured and calm. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how unhurried this work felt. There was no urgency. The channel was not broken. It was simply changing, as all things do. Maintenance was about listening, not correcting. These moments of care were often quiet and solitary. The sound of water moving slowly beside the caretaker created a natural rhythm. Hands moved deliberately. Thoughts softened. The mind settled into the present moment. This repetition carried out season after season created familiarity. Caretakers knew how the channel should feel beneath their hands. They noticed subtle differences in sound and flow. This sensitivity developed only through patience. Maintenance became a form of meditation. Attention rested fully on simple actions, lifting, adjusting, clearing. There was no rush to finish. Completion was not the goal. Balance was. Children learned by watching. They walked alongside elders, observing how care was given without force. Over time, they began helping, learning when to act and when to leave things as they were. Knowledge was passed gently, not through instruction, but through shared experience. Understanding grew naturally, just like the channels themselves. As night deepens, imagine this care continuing across generations. One person's work blends seamlessly into another's. No single caretaker claims ownership. Responsibility is shared across time. This continuity created stability. Channels rarely failed because they were never neglected. Small efforts prevented large problems. Calm attention replaced crisis. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of knowing that water would continue to flow, not because of constant monitoring, but because of steady care. At night, caretakers slept peacefully. They trusted what they had tended. There was no anxiety about sudden failure. The channel had been seen, felt, understood. As your breathing deepens, imagine how soothing this trust must have felt. When care is consistent, worry dissolves naturally. Maintenance was not about perfection. Channels were allowed to age. Stones smoothed further. Earth settled. These changes were welcomed as part of the system's life. Nothing was forced back to an original state. Adaptation was expected. Care responded to change rather than resisting it. As night settles further, imagine the channel resting too. Water continues its gentle movement. The land holds everything quietly. No one is working now. There is nothing that needs immediate attention. This shared rest was possible because care had already been given. The idea of maintenance as meditation teaches a quiet lesson that tending something regularly without urgency creates peace. The act itself becomes grounding. As your thoughts slow, imagine applying this same approach inward. There is nothing to fix urgently. Small awareness is enough. Gentle attention brings balance. Just as channels were cared for over generations, your body has learned how to restore itself over time. Sleep is not something to force. It arrives naturally when conditions are calm. Inhale gently. Exhale slowly. The night continues. The channels remain steady. The land rests. You are supported by the same quiet wisdom where care is patient, attention is gentle, and rest is trusted. And as you drift into sleep, imagine yourself held within this long tradition of calm tending, where nothing is rushed, nothing is neglected, and everything flows peacefully through the night and into deep, lasting rest. As the night grows quieter and your breathing settles into a slow, peaceful rhythm, imagine standing beside a structure that does not announce itself. It does not rise high or demand attention. It does not carry inscriptions or marks of ownership. Long ago, ancient American aqueducts existed not as monuments to be admired, but as memories woven quietly into everyday life. These aqueducts were never built to impress. They were built to serve. Their success was measured not by how visible they were, but by how seamlessly they fit into the rhythm of the community. Over time, they became part of collective memory, familiar, trusted, and gently taken for granted. Imagine a village where water moves calmly through shallow channels. People pass by without stopping to notice. Children step over them easily. Adults draw water without ceremony. No one pauses to admire the structure itself, yet everyone depends on it. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how deeply comforting that must have been to rely on something so quietly dependable that it faded into the background of daily life. These aqueducts carried more than water. They carried routine. They marked time in subtle ways: morning use, midday rest, evening quiet. Their presence shaped habits without instruction. Memory did not live in written records or carved stone. It lived in repeated action. The way hands dipped into flowing water, the way feet followed familiar paths beside channels, the way sound changed slightly as water passed certain bends. Children learned these patterns unconsciously. They grew up knowing where water flowed, where it slowed, where it cooled the air on warm days. This knowledge became part of who they were, passed forward without words. Aqueducts were remembered through use, not storytelling. There were no ceremonies to honor them. Their memory lived in continuity. As night deepens, imagine how these channels sounded after dark. Without daytime noise, their flow became more noticeable. Not loud, just present. That sound connected generations, offering the same reassurance year after year. People did not think of aqueducts as ancient. They thought of them as familiar. Age did not make them special. Reliability did. Even as years passed and hands that built them were forgotten, the aqueducts continued doing what they had always done. Memory stayed alive through function. As your breathing deepens, imagine walking along an old channel long after its builders are gone. The stones are smooth, the path is clear. You may not know who placed each piece, but you feel their care in the balance and flow. This is how community memory worked. It was not stored in names or dates. It lived in the feeling of trust. Aqueducts were never isolated. They were connected to homes, fields, paths, and gathering places. Their memory was shared because their purpose was shared. When repairs were needed, they were made quietly. There was no sense of restoring a relic. It was simply maintaining what had always been there. As time moved forward, some aqueducts fell out of use. New ways of bringing water emerged, but even then, these channels were not erased. They remained in the land, faint but present. People walked past them, sometimes unaware of their origin, yet still feeling a sense of calm. The memory remained, even when the function faded. As night settles further, imagine these old channels holding silence now. No water moves through them, yet they still guide the eye. They still suggest flow. They still mark where life once moved gently. This quiet presence is memory without words. The aqueducts did not demand to be remembered. They allowed memory to remain naturally. As your thoughts slow, consider how comforting this idea can be. Not everything meaningful needs to be named or preserved formally. Some things matter simply because they supported life quietly. The aqueducts taught communities that value does not require attention. Strength does not require display. As sleep approaches, imagine yourself resting near one of these ancient channels. You do not need to know its history. You simply feel the calm it carries. Your breathing slows further. The night grows still. Memory surrounds you, not as stories or facts, but as atmosphere. The same atmosphere that once allowed people to live, work, and rest without worry. And as you drift into sleep, you are held by this quiet understanding that what truly matters does not need to stand tall or speak loudly. It only needs to endure gently, carrying you peacefully into the night. As night settles more deeply and your breathing becomes slow and even, imagine time measured not by dates or calendars, but by the gentle turning of seasons. Long ago, across ancient American landscapes, water did not move the same way all year. Its flow shifted quietly with spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and people learned to welcome these changes rather than resist them. The seasons were not interruptions. They were part of the design. In early spring, water arrived with renewed energy. Snow melted in distant hills. Rain softened the ground. Streams widened slightly, carrying fresh movement into channels shaped patiently by human hands. The land absorbed this abundance calmly, guided by paths that allowed water to spread without rushing. Imagine standing near a channel in early spring. The air feels cool but alive. The water sounds fuller, more present, not loud, just confident. The flow brings reassurance that the land is waking again. As you breathe slowly now, imagine the scent of damp earth and fresh air. Plants nearby respond gently, their roots drawing moisture without strain. Fields begin to prepare quietly, not hurried by expectation. Early Americans understood that spring water carried both opportunity and responsibility. Channels were observed carefully during this season, not to control the flow, but to ensure it remained balanced. Small adjustments were made when needed, always gently. Then summer arrived, bringing warmth and longer days. Water levels lowered naturally as rain became less frequent. The flow softened, becoming calmer and more measured. Channels narrowed slightly, guiding water where it was most needed. Imagine resting near a channel on a warm summer evening. The stone edges feel warm from the day's sun. Water moves slowly, releasing coolness into the air. Insects hum softly. The rhythm feels steady and comforting. As your breathing deepens, imagine how predictable this felt. Summer water did not surprise. It arrived consistently, allowing life to settle into routine. Fields received moisture gradually. Villages stayed cool. Nights were calm. Autumn brought a different shift. Rain returned gently. Leaves fell, sometimes gathering along channel edges. The sound of water changed again, slightly fuller but slower than spring. Imagine the colors of autumn reflected in the water's surface. The flow feels thoughtful, as though preparing for rest. People responded by slowing their own pace. Harvests finished, maintenance was done quietly. Autumn taught acceptance. Water carried reminders that change was coming, but without urgency. Channels held steady, guiding water without strain. As night deepens, imagine the sound of wind moving leaves across stone. Water continues flowing beneath it all, unchanged by surface movement. Then winter arrived. Water did not disappear, it simply transformed. Some channels slowed significantly, others continued flowing beneath thin layers of ice. Springs remained steady, protected by the earth's warmth. Imagine a winter night now. Snow rests softly along channel edges. The landscape is quiet. Water moves silently beneath the surface, unseen but present. As your breathing deepens further, imagine how comforting this knowledge was. Even in stillness, water remained. Life paused, but did not stop. Early Americans trusted this cycle. They did not expect water to behave the same way year-round. They allowed it to respond naturally to temperature and weather. Channels were built with this in mind. Slopes were gentle enough to prevent freezing damage. Materials expanded and contracted without breaking. Nothing was rigid. This flexibility allowed systems to endure across many seasons without failure. As spring returned again, ice melted gradually, water resumed visible movement, channels adjusted naturally, having rested through the cold. This cycle repeated year after year. Each season left a subtle mark, smoothing stone, shifting earth, deepening familiarity. As your thoughts slow, imagine how reassuring this must have felt. There was no fear of sudden loss. Changes arrived gradually, giving time to adapt. Water taught patience through seasons. It showed that flow does not need to be constant to be reliable. Variation was part of stability. At night, regardless of season, water offered the same quiet presence, sometimes louder, sometimes nearly silent, always dependable. As sleep approaches, imagine your own day as a season that has completed its cycle. Activity has softened, thoughts have slowed, rest is arriving naturally. You do not need to force stillness. Like water, your body knows when to slow. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. The seasons continue their quiet turning. Water continues its steady response. The land remains calm. And as you drift into sleep, you are carried by this ancient rhythm where change is gentle, flow is trusted, and rest arrives naturally, season by season, breath by breath, into deep and peaceful night. As the night grows quieter and your breathing settles into a slow, effortless rhythm, imagine a time when change arrived gently, without urgency, without struggle. Long ago, across ancient American landscapes, water paths did not always remain fixed. Streams wandered, channels adjusted, springs shifted their emphasis. And when these changes happened, they were met not with conflict, but with calm understanding. Water was never expected to stay perfectly still. Those who lived alongside it understood that movement was part of its nature. Paths shifted gradually, guided by weather, seasons, and the quiet reshaping of land. Instead of resisting these changes, people learned to observe them patiently. Imagine standing beside a channel at dusk. The water still flows, but its center line has drifted slightly since last season. The change is subtle, barely noticeable unless you've been paying attention. There is no alarm in this discovery, only curiosity. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how this awareness felt, attentive, calm, and grounded. Change did not signal failure, it signaled information. When water began favoring a new route, the land offered clues. Soil softened in one area, plants grew greener along a different edge, the sound of flow shifted gently. These signs were not warnings, they were invitations to adapt. Early Americans responded with small, thoughtful adjustments. A stone was moved, a shallow trench was widened, a channel edge was reinforced lightly. These changes guided water without forcing it back into an old pattern. There was no battle between human intention and natural movement. The goal was alignment, not control. As night deepens, imagine the calm confidence this approach created. There was no fear of loss when water shifted. There was trust that solutions would emerge naturally through attention and care. Water paths were allowed to evolve because systems had been designed with flexibility from the beginning. Slopes were gentle, materials were forgiving. Nothing was rigid enough to break when conditions changed. Imagine a channel after heavy rains. Water flows a little wider, finding new space temporarily. When rains pass, the flow returns to its usual course, leaving behind subtle changes that strengthen the system rather than weaken it. As your breathing deepens, imagine how peaceful it must have been to know that no sudden decisions were required. Change unfolded slowly, giving time to respond thoughtfully. Sometimes shifts were permanent. A spring weakened while another grew stronger. A stream altered its course over many years. In these cases, new channels were shaped gradually, guided by the same principles as before. Old paths were not erased. They remained visible in the land, gentle lines where water once traveled. These traces were not seen as failures. They were memories. People walked alongside these old channels, remembering how water once moved there. The land held this history quietly, without judgment. As night settles further, imagine the silence around such places. The water may no longer flow there, but the ground still feels shaped, familiar, calm. This acceptance reduced conflict not just with nature, but within communities. There was no rush to blame or argue when water paths shifted. Attention turned instead toward understanding and cooperation. Everyone knew change was natural. Everyone knew patience was effective. As your thoughts slow, imagine applying this same principle inward. Thoughts may shift, emotions may drift. You do not need to force them back into previous patterns. You can observe them gently and allow them to move on. Water paths shifting without conflict taught a powerful lesson that adaptation does not require struggle. It requires presence. At night, water continued flowing, sometimes along new routes, sometimes along familiar ones. Either way, it moved steadily, supported by gravity and land. People slept peacefully, knowing that small changes would be addressed calmly in time. There was no need for vigilance or worry. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine the land adjusting quietly beneath the stars. Water finds its way naturally. The earth responds gently. Nothing is breaking. Nothing is wrong. The old paths remain as memory. The new paths form with ease. Your breathing slows further. Inhale softly. Exhale completely. Just as ancient water systems adapted without conflict, you can release the need to hold things in place tonight. Let the day drift away. Let thoughts find new paths and then fade. The night holds everything gently. And as you drift into sleep, you are carried by this calm wisdom, where change happens softly, alignment replaces resistance, and rest arrives naturally, flowing you peacefully into deep, untroubled sleep. As the night deepens and your breathing becomes slow and effortless, imagine a place where water once moved steadily, day and night, shaping life without calling attention to itself. Long ago, across ancient American landscapes, some waterways slowly fell into quiet, not through disaster or neglect, but through gentle change. Their silence arrived gradually, softly, without fear. These waterways were not abandoned suddenly. There were no urgent departures, no broken systems, no sense of failure. Instead, life simply shifted. New springs emerged closer to growing communities. Rivers altered their courses slightly over time. People followed these changes calmly, carrying their routines with them. Imagine standing beside one of these channels during its final years of use. Water still moves through it, but more slowly than before. The flow is thinner, quieter, almost thoughtful. There is no distress in this change, only transition. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how attentively people noticed this shift. They did not panic or attempt to force water back into its old path. They observed, listened, and understood that the land was offering something new. Use of the channel became less frequent. Fields, once watered daily, began relying on different sources. Vessels were filled elsewhere. The channel was still respected, still maintained lightly, but no longer depended upon. Over time, water flowed only after heavy rains, then only during certain seasons. Eventually, it flowed no more. And when the water stopped, silence took its place. This silence did not feel empty, it felt complete. The channel remained, shaped carefully by hands long gone. Its edges softened, stones settled deeper into the earth. Grass grew where water once passed, not aggressively, but gently. As night settles further, imagine walking along this quiet path. You can still see where water once moved. The curve remains. The slope is still there. The land remembers. The silence of abandoned waterways carried meaning. It marked a moment of transition, a pause rather than an ending. These channels had served well. Their work was finished. People did not dismantle them. They did not erase them. They allowed them to rest. As your breathing deepens, imagine the calm acceptance that came with this choice. Nothing needed to be undone. Nothing needed to be preserved forcefully. The land would take care of what remained. Seasons continued to pass. Rain filled the channels briefly, then disappeared into the soil. Leaves gathered and scattered. Snow softened edges in winter. Sun warmed stone in summer. The waterways became quieter with each year, blending more deeply into the landscape. They no longer carried water, but they carried memory. Animals moved along these paths. Plants grew comfortably nearby. The channels became corridors of stillness rather than flow. As night deepens, imagine the silence now surrounding one of these ancient waterways. It is not sharp or lonely. It is wide and peaceful. The absence of sound allows other sensations to emerge: the feel of cool earth underfoot, the scent of grass, the distant call of night creatures. Silence becomes layered rather than empty. These quiet waterways taught an important lesson: that usefulness does not define worth. Even without water, they remained part of the land's story. As your thoughts slow, imagine how comforting it must have been to allow systems to end naturally without urgency or regret. Letting go was not seen as loss, but as balance. People trusted that what was needed would continue elsewhere. There was no fear in this trust. At night, the land rested more deeply. Without the movement of water, the channels became spaces of reflection. The earth settled. The memory remained. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine the silence growing softer, warmer. It does not press inward. It simply surrounds gently. The gradual silence of abandoned waterways mirrors the way sleep arrives, not suddenly, not forcefully, but slowly as activity fades and rest takes over. Your thoughts, like water, no longer need to move. They can settle. Nothing needs to happen now. Nothing needs to be maintained or adjusted. The land holds everything gently. And as you drift into sleep, you do so alongside these quiet paths where movement once flowed, where purpose was fulfilled, and where silence now rests peacefully, carrying you into deep, untroubled night. As the night grows quieter and your breathing settles into a slow, gentle rhythm, imagine a place where water once flowed steadily, shaping paths through earth and stone. Though the water has long since moved on, the land itself remembers, not loudly, not insistently, but patiently, in subtle ways that reveal themselves only to those who pause and listen. Long after ancient waterways fell silent, the land did not forget them. It held their memory quietly, preserving traces of flow in shape, texture, and feeling. These memories were not written or spoken. They were embedded in the ground itself. Imagine walking across a wide, open landscape at dusk. The light is soft. The air is calm. At first glance, everything appears natural and undisturbed, but as you move slowly, you notice a gentle curve in the terrain, a shallow depression that seems intentional. This is where water once traveled. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how the ground feels beneath your feet along this path. It is slightly smoother, more compact. Grass grows differently here, denser, perhaps, greener. Even without water, the land still reflects its presence. These subtle signs were recognized by those who lived closely with the land. They knew where water had been, even when it no longer flowed. They could sense it in how soil held moisture, in how plants gathered, in how the ground cooled at night. The land remembered through balance. It did not cling to the past or attempt to restore it. It simply carried the imprint forward, allowing memory to exist without effort. As night deepens, imagine how rain responds to these old paths. When storms pass through, water briefly returns to familiar routes, following the same curves shaped long ago. Then it fades again, leaving behind quiet confirmation that the land still knows. These moments were not surprising, they were expected. Memory did not require permanence to remain alive. The land also remembered through sound. Even without flowing water, wind moved differently along old channels. Air settled there. Night sounds gathered softly. Silence felt deeper in these spaces. As your breathing deepens, imagine standing still within such a place. The quiet feels intentional, supportive, almost protective. There is no emptiness here, only rest. Plants remembered too. Roots followed softened soil. Certain species thrived where water once lingered. These patterns continued long after the flow ended. Animals sensed it as well. Paths formed along these old routes. Movement followed memory. Life adapted gently, guided by what had been. The land's memory did not cause longing or regret. It offered continuity. What had once supported life continued to do so in quieter ways. As night settles further, imagine the stars above reflecting faintly on the contours of the earth. The land lies calm, holding centuries within its shape. People who walked these spaces generations later did not always know their history, but they felt something familiar, a sense of ease, of flow, of quiet alignment. The land remembered not just water, but how people had lived alongside it. It remembered patience, balance, and trust. As your thoughts slow, imagine releasing the need to remember details. You do not need to know every story to feel calm. Presence is enough. The land teaches that memory does not fade when activity ends, it transforms. Old channels become places of rest. Former flow becomes quiet support. Purpose becomes peace. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine your own thoughts settling in the same way. What no longer needs to move can rest. What no longer needs attention can soften. Nothing is lost, everything changes shape. The land remains steady, holding what has passed without strain. And as you drift into sleep, you are supported by this same quiet remembrance, where movement has softened into stillness, and the earth carries everything gently, through the night and into deep, peaceful rest. As the night settles into its deepest calm and your breathing becomes slow and steady, imagine walking through a quiet landscape where time feels softened. Long after ancient aqueducts and channels fell out of daily use, their forms did not disappear. They remained, weathered, lowered, and partially reclaimed, yet still quietly guiding rain and roots beneath the surface of the land. these ruins were never fully erased. Stone walls softened into low ridges, clay linings blended into soil, shallow channels became gentle depressions that only careful eyes could notice. And yet when rain fell, water still remembered where to go. Imagine a light rain arriving at dusk. The sky is gray and calm. Drops touch the ground softly, soaking into soil that has rested undisturbed for generations. Slowly, the rain begins to move, not randomly, but along faint lines shaped long ago by human hands and natural flow working together. As you breathe slowly now, imagine watching water gather and travel along these old paths. It does not rush, it follows curves that feel familiar, even if unseen. The land responds gently, as though remembering something important. These ruins guide rain without effort. They do not resist the water or redirect it sharply. They simply offer suggestion, slight dips, subtle slopes, softened edges that invite movement in a certain direction. Water accepts this guidance naturally. Roots do the same. Plants growing near these ancient structures sense the difference beneath the soil. Roots follow paths where earth is looser, cooler, and slightly richer from centuries of moisture. They grow downward and outward, guided by spaces shaped long ago. Imagine standing still and feeling the ground beneath you. Though the surface looks ordinary, below it lies a quiet network of memory, stone fragments, compacted soil, traces of flow that continue to influence life. As night deepens, imagine the land breathing slowly. Rain settles, water drains gently away. Nothing pools suddenly, nothing floods. The old systems still do their work, not as structures, but as influence. The ruins do not interrupt nature, they collaborate with it. Over time, plants grow stronger along these lines. Grass remains greener longer after rain. Trees take root where soil holds moisture just a little better. Life follows memory without needing instruction. As your breathing deepens, imagine the comfort of this continuity. Even after human activity fades, thoughtful design continues to support balance. These ruins were never meant to last perfectly. Their purpose was not permanence in form, but endurance in function. Even broken, they still guide. Imagine walking along one of these old channels at twilight. You might not recognize it as an aqueduct. It feels more like a natural feature, a shallow path, a gentle curve in the land, but your body senses ease there. Movement feels unforced. The land remembers not through sharp lines, but through feeling. As night settles further, imagine roots growing slowly in darkness. They do not rush. They explore patiently, responding to subtle differences in texture and moisture. They follow paths shaped by water long before. Rain returns season after season, and each time it follows these same gentle suggestions. The ruins remain quiet teachers. This quiet guidance creates stability. Water drains smoothly, soil remains healthy, life continues without disturbance. As your thoughts slow, imagine how this applies to rest. You do not need to force sleep. Your body remembers how to rest. Paths have been shaped by countless nights before. Just as rain follows old channels, sleep follows familiar rhythms. The ruins that guide rain and roots show that care leaves lasting impressions. Even when structures fall away, intention remains embedded in the land. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine the land at rest after rain. Moisture settles deep into soil, roots hold gently, the night grows still. Nothing needs to move quickly, nothing needs repair. The land holds everything softly. And as you drift into sleep, you are supported by this same quiet guidance, where old paths still serve, memory still shapes movement, and rest arrives naturally, carried gently through the night. As the night reaches its quietest hour and your breathing slows into a gentle, natural rhythm, imagine yourself resting beside channels that time has nearly erased, but not entirely forgotten. These ancient waterways no longer carry visible streams, yet they remain present in the land, holding the calm of centuries within their softened paths. The world around you feels still. The air is neither cool nor warm, but balanced. The ground beneath you feels steady, familiar, as if it has been waiting. These forgotten channels do not announce themselves. They do not ask to be seen. They simply exist, quiet companions to the passing of time. Long ago, water moved here steadily, shaping daily life without effort. People walked alongside these channels, trusting their flow, building routines around their presence. Now the water has moved elsewhere, but the channels remain, resting in silence. Imagine lying near one of these paths at dusk. The sky above fades slowly from blue to deep indigo. The land exhales. There is no urgency in the moment. Nothing needs to happen next. As you breathe slowly now, imagine how the earth feels beneath you. It is slightly cooler along the channel's path, holding moisture deeper below the surface. Even without water flowing, the land remembers how to support rest. These forgotten channels once guided movement of water, of people, of daily rhythms. Now they guide stillness. They offer a place where thoughts can slow and drift away naturally. The absence of sound here feels full rather than empty. Night insects hum softly. A breeze passes gently across the land. The silence carries depth, like a wide space where nothing needs to be filled. Imagine the countless nights these channels have witnessed, nights of activity, nights of rest, nights when water flowed under moonlight, nights like this one where nothing moves but breath and time. As your breathing deepens, imagine how the land has learned to hold quiet. Without water's movement, it holds memory instead, layered, patient, and calm. The forgotten channels do not long for what they once were. They do not seek to be restored. Their purpose has changed, and they accept it fully. This acceptance is what makes them peaceful. Grass grows gently along their edges, roots settle comfortably within softened soil. Rain visits occasionally, briefly tracing old paths before sinking back into the earth. Everything feels in harmony. As night deepens further, imagine the stars overhead, steady, distant, unchanging. They have watched these channels through centuries of flow and silence alike. Nothing about this moment feels temporary or fragile. You rest easily here. Your body feels supported without effort. Muscles loosen. Thoughts arrive more slowly, then fade before forming completely. The forgotten channels teach that rest does not require activity. Presence is enough. Imagine your own thoughts as water that has finished its journey for the day. They no longer need to move forward. They can settle gently into stillness. The land around you holds everything without strain. It does not rush to fill silence. It allows it to exist. As your eyelids grow heavier, imagine the channels becoming less visible, blending further into the darkness, not disappearing, just resting. You do the same. Your breathing becomes deeper. Each inhale feels softer, each exhale longer. The space between breaths grows calm and wide. The forgotten channels of time lie quietly beside you, holding centuries of movement and rest within their shape. They do not demand remembrance. Their presence alone is enough. Nothing needs to be planned. Nothing needs attention. The night holds you gently. And as you drift fully into sleep, you rest beside these silent paths where time has softened into stillness, memory has become calm, and the land supports you effortlessly, carrying you into deep, unbroken, peaceful rest.